Today we're at the Vicksburg National Military Park, the Vicksburg Visitor Center. The two opposing generals, Grant, Ulysses S. Grant here, and Pemberton, John C. Pemberton. This is Pemberton's sword that he surrendered after the siege.
We're about to see one area where the killing field between the lines has been cleared. As of 2011, 90 acres have been cleared to make the battlefield appear much as it was at the time. Used to be, when we made this turn, all you could see was trees. Well, today, you see a lot more than trees. The ridge lines, the ravines out here are natural terrain, and basically that's what it looked like. This is the widest part of the killing field on the Vicksburg battlefield. There's actually 800 yards between the Union and Confederate lines. This is called Battery de Goyer. All of Grant's 250 cannon were pointed toward the Vicksburg works. At 6 o'clock in the morning, using synchronized watches for the first time in history as far as we know, the artillery barrage began at 6 o'clock and fired for 4 solid hours. Now the day was warm. It was partly cloudy, but there was no breeze. After a few minutes, the smoke from the black powder being fired covered this whole battlefield. They couldn't begin to see the forts over there, but as long as they're pointed in the right direction, they just kept shooting. At 10 o'clock, these cannon fell silent. Union troops from the ravine to your rear, behind us here, came out in line of battle. Sounds silly, but that's still the way they did it, shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. Many of the men carrying ladders and logs to try to get into the fort. Now, that's 800 yards away. And as we go up for the photo op, you'll see that they had to go down into a ravine and up and down 6 times before they ever got to the ditch in front of the fort. The men are exhausted. They're wearing their thick wool uniforms. Over 200 of them die from heat exhaustion before they ever get up to the ditch. They're being mowed down en masse. It's a turkey shoot. They're having to avoid the abattis, go through the cleared areas, the killing field, truly. And as they get up to that ditch, you know, the average height of the man was 5'4", 5'6" at the time. He's looking down at a 10-foot ditch, 16 feet wide, and a 20-foot wall, and they're falling all over the place. Well, that's not a good place to be. Obviously, they turn around and head back here to safety.
We're looking out on the Confederate fortifications, up where the monument is, and to its right are little red flags. That's where the Confederate stronghold was. And the first and second frontal attack was from here. And they gave up in the end because of the terrain and trying to get up. And the siege of Vicksburg turned into one of starving them out and sitting and waiting until the supplies ran out and disease took place, and eventually they surrendered in July.
Now, I've been amazed at how many Union and Confederate soldiers wrote about witnessing the surrender negotiations. Before they cleared all these trees, you couldn't even see that house over here, which wasn't here at the time. But now that this is all cleared, I can see why so many North and South could see what was going on. And above that stone wall, you will see a tree. To me, it's just now coming into view. And under a tree where that tree now stands is where Pemberton and Grant met at 3 o'clock on the afternoon of July 3rd, 1863, to discuss surrender negotiations. So with the trees all gone, and keep in mind they were, you can see why so many Confederates and so many Union troops could actually see what was going on. Of course, they couldn't hear it, but they could see the talking going on. Now that's not the surrender site. There is no surrender site. They agreed to surrender terms during the night by passing notes back and forth between Grant and Pemberton. On the morning of May 22nd, John Logan's men were lined up back here as 3rd Division, and they came running down this road to attack a fort that's further on down in front of us that we're going to see.
Now this road up here is the direction of Logan's attack, and he was going up this road to attack a fort at the end of the road to the right of the monument you see over the hill. And behind me is the Illinois monument, which I'll turn around and show you. This low ridge that I'm shooting out towards was where we were just at, which was the position for the frontal attack across the killing fields here. That house was not there at the time of the siege of Vicksburg. Jackson Road led down to the 3rd Louisiana Redan, an innocent looking ridge today, but in 1863 the federal assault that went down that road to attack the Redan failed. In May 1863, after this second assault by Logan's forces down this road, Grant gave up. He decided it was impossible to take Vicksburg by frontal assault, and settled in to starve out the city, which he did by July of 1863. 47 days later.
Right in front of us, General Grant's headquarters. This is the 27th Louisiana Lunette, a crescent-shaped fort that bulges out to the northeast. It's connected to the stockade redan on our right over here by huge logs set into the ground here. These logs are about 2 feet in diameter. Holes are cut in them so that they can fire out toward the east. Back there, just behind the tree in the center there, is the hill that Sherman stood out on and looked down here on May 18th. On May 19th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, the artillery opens up from behind the ridgeline and fires for 4 hours. At 2 o'clock, the Union lines come over the ridgeline in line of battle and down through the ravine and make their way up to here. It's a bloody, bloody mess. Hundreds of Confederates are firing down into the ravine, which is filled with abattis and the pits we're talking about. Many of the men dug into the side of the hill to wait till dark till they could make their way back to the line. It's a very, very bloody battle. Sherman sends 5,000 men and loses 1,000 of them. The first plaque on this road on the left of here is to Captain Edward C. Washington, a grandnephew of George Washington. He's leading the only regular Army unit here, the 13th U.S. Infantry, 1st Battalion. They charge across from way back there, across the right-hand side. He loses 40% of his men between that ridge line and this one. He loses 16 flag bearers. His 17th manages to plant the flag on the wall of the fort here. Even today, the 13th U.S. Infantry has on their shoulder patch first at Vicksburg. They were the first ones to place their flag. The second assault came on May 22nd when they charged in column down this road here. And they had a raiding party in front, 154 volunteers, of which only 42 survived the attack against this fort. It was a very bloody situation. The bodies lie out here until May 25th, when Pemberton asked Grant to call a truce and remove the dead, bury the dead, and remove the wounded back. So they have a truce that lasted about 6 hours. Confederates helped bury the dead and carry the wounded to be treated. Sherman meets Samuel Lockett, who was a Confederate major who designed the forts. He saw him standing on this fort in front of us and sent for him. When he meets him, he hands him a bundle. He says, "Major, these are letters to the soldiers and citizens of Vicksburg. I've held on to them far too long. Would you please make sure they get delivered?" Lockett is amazed. "Yes, I will." When they introduce each other and Sherman realizes Lockett had designed the Vicksburg Works, he says, "Man, you know how to take advantage of the terrain. These forts are impenetrable."